Hey YouTube, Joe Bassett here. Whenever I do a guided backpacking trip, especially for beginners, or I do an intro to bushcraft or wilderness survival course, we end up sitting around the fire at the end of the day, and I'm almost always asked, is it true that you can boil water in a paper cup or a plastic bottle? Yep, you can. And I demonstrated. It's one of the most often things I'm asked to do. I'll be honest, it's really a parlor trick. There are very few survival situations where it would come into play, but it is an excellent thing to learn how to do to improve your fire building skills. So today, I've hiked back into the woods behind the house. I'm going to make a tinder bundle. We'll make a fire. I'm going to show you how to boil water in a paper cup or a plastic bottle. So now that we have a nice small fire going, the key is going to be getting this down to coals, no flames. Now we'll wait for that. This is based on the key 3 that we teach at Valiant Outfitters. A lot of bushcrafters, survival experts teach the rule of 4, and that's shelter, fire, water, and food. We do shelter, water, and food, and fire is kind of the prime directive, because if you have your fire together, if you have your fire skills down, it takes care of a lot of mistakes that you may make in the others. It helps provide heat for your shelter, it helps purify your water, and it also will help cook food so that you can kill any parasites that are in that food. So you can see how fire kind of overlays all of the others. Now today I've just brought a bottle of water with me, but there's a stream over that way a little bit. There's a lot of particulate in it, so if I were to collect that, before I put it into my water bottle, I would want to make sure to filter it, strain it through a shmog or a bandana or something like that. Won't need to do that in this case. Now keep in mind that when you boil the water, you are going to be killing parasites that are in it, but you're not going to be getting rid of pathogens. So you want to make sure that you're looking for water that's away from roadways or factories, that type of thing. While we wait for this to go down a little bit more, let me explain a little bit more about our key 3 concept that we teach at Valiant Outfitters. As I said, we teach the key 3 of shelter, water, and food in that order. We prioritize shelter, and then next is water. And because most survival situations resolve themselves one way or the other within 72 hours, food very often doesn't come into play. Now, we do teach how to harvest food. We do teach that you carry some nutrition with you at all times because while you may not need the calories to stay alive, it certainly does help with morale and to keep your spirits up. Because we're going for coals, good hot coals, hardwoods are going to be best for this. You can use softwoods, and I'll often use a softwood to get my fire going, create some heat, and then put some hardwoods on to make my coals. With the key 3, we teach that in each of those areas, fire as your prime directive, and then shelter and water and food, that you have 3 tools at your disposal at 3 different levels. Fire, for instance. Your first tool is something that's pre-manufactured. A Bic lighter, some matches, something like that. Something that is foolproof, takes a very low skill level to use in a survival situation. Your level 2 might be something like a ferro rod, something that is pretty easy to use, you have pretty high success with, particularly if you have a fire starter like I used here, or you use fat wood or something like that. Your third level tool is something that you wouldn't have with you, but you can manufacture in the wild, such as a bow drill. All the tools you need for a bow drill, even down to the cordage, you can source in the wild. Now what I would do is I would use a shoelace for that cordage, but you could make the cordage in the wild. But you can see how that key 3, having 3 levels of tools, can prepare you for just about any situation. So my flames are almost completely gone. I have a little tiny bed of coals here. That's more than enough for what I'm trying to do. I'm just going to do a little bit of water so that we don't need to wait very long. Of course, I've removed the cap. There we go. I've created a little flat spot in the middle there, and I'm just going to put that bottle down in there. Now you're going to have different levels of success with this based on how thick the plastic of the bottle is. In fact, if it's pretty hot and this thin bottle, we may lose quite a bit of the top of the bottle here. You also don't want to have the water too close to the top because it will start to deform from the heat that's around it, especially on these thin bottles. As I said, this is more a parlor trick than anything else. There are much better ways to purify your water and make it potable so that you can drink it safely. But this is a lot of fun to do when you're out with your friends in the woods camping. The way this works is that the water keeps the plastic of the bottle, or if you're using a paper cup, and it can't be styrofoam, it must be a paper cup. The water will keep the plastic or the paper below its ignition point because, of course, water boils at 212 degrees, and the ignition point of the plastic or the paper of a paper cup is going to be higher than that. So the water is actually going to keep that material cool enough that it doesn't completely melt or it doesn't catch on fire. Also notice there up near the top of the bottle, you can see the steam starting to form there from it getting ready to boil. So we should only be a few more minutes away from boiling point. I'm getting a little worried this parlor trick may not work because of those flames that came up. You can see the bottle is really deforming now. That's because of the flames and because that heat is getting up higher. And the bottle is starting to tip over a little bit, but you can see those bubbles forming even more in there. So let's lean it back a little bit, see if that doesn't help. Gusts of wind keep coming along, just little gentle breezes keep that flame coming up, but you can see we're getting to that boiling point. Even with the flame, we're able to save the bottle. There we have it, a relatively good boil on that water. We let that go for 2 or 3 minutes. That's going to kill any parasites or bacteria, that type of thing, in the water. Oop, come around this side, you can see. Well, there you have it. Boiling water in a plastic bottle. Also works for a paper cup. This is a great way to test your fire building skills and also your patience, because when you cook over an open fire, you really do want it down around just coals, very little flame. So this will really help you practice that skill. We use it at Valiant Outfitters for our survival courses. We'll have contests, races to see who can bring water to a boil the fastest using just a bottle like this. Thanks for joining me for another Wilderness Wednesday. If you liked this video, if you enjoyed it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Just about every Wednesday I have a tip for you for getting out in the woods, which is a great thing to do because it's impossible to be outside in the woods and in a bad mood at the same time. This is Joe Bassett for Valiant Outfitters. We'll see you next time.